Okay, we'll go ahead and get started. Welcome to Reading is Fundamentals and the Creation Gyms webinar, Every Book is an Arts Book, part of our Every Book Counts series. Everyone is muted for the presentation. If you have any questions, please direct them into the Zoom question box on your Zoom control panel. We will be answering as many of the questions as we can at the end during our Q&A. Any questions we can't get to during the presentation, we will follow up with answers in an email. Please note that this webinar is being recorded, and we will make a link with the recording available to all of you within 2 business days after the broadcast, as well as a copy of this presentation and a certificate of completion, as well as any links to resources mentioned throughout this webinar. We do have closed captioning available on this webinar. You just need to click more on your Zoom control panel and click captions. Next slide. We are thrilled to have you join us today. My name is Erin Bailey and I'm RIF's Director of Programs and Content. I'll be guiding this presentation today. Carly O'Brien, Content Developer, will be assisting with the chat box throughout the presentation. RIF was founded in 1966 and is the leading voice of children's literacy. We partner with a grassroots network of 1 million volunteers in communities nationwide to distribute more than 425 million books to more than 163 million children in all 50 states, inspiring generations to read, learn, and grow. For more than 50 years, we've been providing quality content to make an impact and engage communities in promoting a lifelong love of reading among children. RIF is committed to a literate America by inspiring a passion for reading among all children, providing quality content to create impact and engaging communities in the solution to give every child the fundamentals for success. This evening's webinar, we will give you an overview, discuss the power of books for art integration pedagogy, how to integrate art standards with content standards to enrich a literacy experience, and then we'll have an opportunity to try it out. Next slide, please. And next slide. This evening's webinar will be using Padlet for our interactive platform. There are 2 ways that you can access the Padlet: either scan the QR code on your screen or check the chat box for the link to the Padlet. We'll also be dropping links into the chat with all resources mentioned throughout the webinar. Now, it is my pleasure to introduce Jessica Jones. We're so grateful Jessica Jones is here this evening. As you can see, she is a middle school assistant principal at the Inspired Teaching Demonstration School. And y'all, it's June, and she just spent an entire day with middle schoolers. So a huge warm thank you for her for being with us this evening. Jessica Jones joined RIF's Middle School Literacy Advisory Board in spring of 2022. She is a consultant for the Creation Gym as well as assistant principal at the Inspired Teaching Demonstration School in Washington, D.C. She has been in the field of education for over a decade, serving children in grades pre-K through 12 as an educator and athletic coach. Her teaching skills include project-based learning, arts integration, 21st century skill development, digital and blended learning curriculums, and educational technology. Jessica is also a professional counseling trainee enrolled in Pepperdine's clinical psychology program. She uses her unique skills set to create experiences for students that address all forms of intelligence. Please give a warm welcome to Jessica Jones.
Thank you, everyone, and thanks for such a lovely introduction. Yes, it is approaching the last week of school, but we are getting it done. And I'm so excited to share with you guys one of my passions, and sometimes I say specialty, which is arts integration, and the power that it can hold when it is being used to engage students in works of literature, texts, and just really trying to get them to understand what they're reading and what they're taking in and how to make it meaningful in their lives. We're just going to start our evening out with asking you, what makes you an artist? I truly believe that all people are artists in some ways. We're constantly creating. And that is really the essence of being an artist. You're creating something. And a lot of times when I talk to teachers about arts integration, they go, I'm not an artist. I can't do this. We're all artists. You guys are creating lesson plans. You guys are creating moments in your classrooms, experiences, and you're on stage all day. So what makes you an artist? Head to this Padlet, use your QR code to tell us what makes you an artist. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to open this Padlet. Oh, well, actually, I don't want to move the QR code. So I'm going to leave that there. And in a few minutes, I'll open the Padlet and read out some of your responses. All right. So I'm hoping you guys have gotten the Padlet QR code or the link in the chat. So I'm just going to show some of the responses in the benefit of time. All right, so what's making us artists? Imagination, exactly. We're going to use that today. Being unique, 100%. The fingerprint is the art form by itself. A way to express myself. I love it. Painting and drawing and building things. A theater kid, me too. I'm a show choir gal. I'm so excited because the lead singer of the original Wicked is performing in DC next week. I'm like, okay. I have a desire to create. I love to put theater into the classroom. Okay, you guys are gonna love this evening, theater kids and people who love drama. This is gonna be something we're gonna talk about tonight. So I'm glad that you all are starting to think of yourselves as artists. I think that's the first step to creating a powerful arts integration unit plan, project-based learning, or just the singular lesson plan that you do with your students, is to get in that artist mind frame and to start thinking creatively. So we're going to do some of that tonight. So what is arts integration? The first time I learned arts integration, I was trained by a group of people called Young Audiences. It's now called Arts for Learning, and they are located all around the United States. And that was some of my primary training in arts integration. And what they introduced to me was the concept of that arts integration is like a jelly roll, and I'm going to explain why. The cupcake has icing on top. You take the icing off, you still have cake. It's still essentially a cupcake. It's just with no icing. But with a jelly roll, if you take out the filling, that jelly roll is going to crumble. It's not going to have its same structure. It's not going to have the same taste or feel. It's no longer a jelly roll. It's bread and filling. That is what arts integration is. If you can remove the art from your lesson plan and it still cohesively be a lesson plan, then you're not really doing arts integration. You're doing arts enhancement. Arts enhancement is very beneficial to students, but arts integration has a different approach, which requires students to both learn the content skill and the art skill. So the goal is to try to provide a holistic interdisciplinary learning experience for students where they experience subjects like math, history, science, and language arts, and through the art form, and also learn an art form. They walk away with more than one skill, a content skill and an art skill. The Kennedy Center defines arts integration as an approach to learning in which students construct and demonstrate understanding through an art form. So another thing that makes it arts integration is the assessment. Usually is the art form. You are assessing their content knowledge through the art form. That often happens in arts integration lesson, and sometimes is like the mark of a very well done arts integration lesson. We'll talk about that a little bit more when we get into our example lesson this evening. So arts integration is well defined by the Kennedy Center because they're one of our leading training and also development centers for arts integration. And there'll be some resources from the Kennedy Center later if you're like, oh, I want to get involved with the Kennedy Center. How can I learn more about arts integration? They have a conference each year, and on our resource page, there's more information about that. But pretty much their definition highlights that you're constructing understanding. So you're really tapping into that constructivist pedagogy, and students are doing the work here. So you are facilitating the process, but the work is really on the students to create their learning and to understand what's being presented to them through discovery and application. Okay, so you're going to demonstrate that understanding that you create and that you construct through the act that you're going to do. And most of the time, it's a performance of dance or an engagement in a dramatic presentation or composition of music. You are going to enact that art form using the content knowledge you have. So think of the art form as the vehicle. The vehicle is allowing students to explore their understanding and their connection with the art. And inside is the content. The content is driving the vehicle, but really the exploring is being done by the art form, which is the vehicle. So the integration of arts into academics has shown to have a profound effect on student ability and progress with their understanding of the content. There was one time I was at a professional development and I was like taken aback by the research that showed that kids who came from arts integration schools performed so much better on the SATs because of a well-rounded cultural understanding of both artists and art theory, but also just the extra vocabulary that they had and also the concrete understanding of the concepts that they learned through constructing their own knowledge and performing it through art. So art forms help us to integrate what we are learning to enhance comprehension. If you're thinking about this as one of like a student, sometimes it can be challenging to grasp what's on the paper. You know, you read the paragraph, you ask them what the paragraph's about. They might have some of the essential things, but they really are missing a lot of it. They read the paragraph again, do the close read, and then next week we talk about what we read last week, and they're like, huh, I don't even remember what we read. So it enhances and codifies the comprehension. It helps make a memorable experience so that students walk away feeling empowered that they understand what's going on and they've demonstrated that understanding and they have memory of their demonstration that they can recall on later. It's much easier to remember how you showed the orbital rotation of the Earth around the sun through performing a ballet where you learned how to plie and get on tippy toes and learn levels and to rotate to show orbit than it is to remember that paper you read in science class. You're going to pretty much remember that ballet that you did. You develop some more interpretive skills. When you're reading straight from the literature and the author is saying, oh, I heard a boom crash from the window and I went to go discover what it was. A student might need some help getting towards interpreting what the author is saying, understanding that that boom crash may have been the baseball that they were playing with on the previous page. Whereas if you're using maybe theater to act out a piece of literature after reading it to them, and they are swinging that bat and they're making that boom crash sound, they can interpret, oh, I have a bat in my hand. I just swung it. I heard a boom and crash. It must be that baseball that we talked about in the last scene. Those types of putting those things to life and acting those things out help us to interpret, but it also makes them use that muscle. We have to decide in order to turn something into a script and we're reading something that the author wrote, we have to decide, what is the author saying? What do we want to convey to our audience when they're reading or listening or hearing our dramatic play script? What do we want to pull out here? Those type of interpretive skills with the drive and the ambition that comes with wanting to put something together that's really nice, and also that comes from having a creative opportunity, they're more likely to be able to take that and to interpret what the author is saying, or at least remember what they learned about how to interpret what the author is saying. It also fosters a sense of creativity that will linger in your classroom after that experience. I can say, like, I try to sometimes integrate arts integration throughout the units. I know I can't do it every day sometimes, especially if I'm at a school where I have to stay on pace, or maybe everyone doesn't understand what arts integration is, and I have to integrate this to my regular lesson plan. Well, I might do one a unit, but those powerful moments affect my other lessons where I'm maybe not working as creatively with my students or maybe not doing arts integration. Those kids are like really inspired by the arts integration experience that they had. And that tends to continue and trickle down to other places in their day-to-day life and where their experience. So it really does foster a community sense of creativity, but also even an expectation that you come up with these imaginative ideas, that you think outside of the box. Another thing is it encourages empathy and perspective taking. When you're taking a piece of literature and trying to apply it and create dialogue to go for a skit, you have to think about what What was that character thinking and feeling? What facial expressions are we going to put on our face to convey that message? How would we feel if we were that student who just hit that bat and crash that baseball into their neighbor's house? What's their face going to look like right after they swing it? Those type of skills require the ability to empathize, and activating those skills with your students will help them have a deeper understanding of the characters, the settings, how the book feels, the message the author is trying to convey, and then hopefully that would trickle down to their understanding of the central ideas and main themes of the text as well. And we'll see some of that put in action in our lesson. It promotes collaboration. Most of the time we're doing the art form, there's an editing process, especially when we're doing fine arts and written works like poetry. We want people to edit. We want feedback on how our performance was. What can we do to make it better? That type of collaboration and communication are really paramount skills that they'll need as they matriculate through all the way to university. I'm still in my grad program, I'm still doing group work, so you'll need that collaboration and communication. And then making literature relevant and engaging. When you really put it in the hands of the student to create these original works, they naturally bring their culture, their feelings, their emotions, their passions, their beliefs, their family, their fears into their work. And that makes it relevant to their life. It makes it engaging and meaningful. All right, so there's some common art forms that we use for arts integration. There's photography, digital media, there's music, there's storytelling, puppetry, drama, dance, and fine arts, which refers to anything painting, sculpting, anything within the fine arts category. So these common forms of art will be what you'll use. Those will be the art standards that you'll use when you're creating your lesson plan. Part of the resources that you'll receive and that you guys will be able to access is the Creation Gems Arts Integration Lesson Plan Guide. Erin mentioned this earlier. I founded the Creation Gem to be an educational resource and consulting firm to teachers, to staff, to schools, to districts, to help them understand how arts integration can impact the classroom. We have lots of goals, which include having an after-school program and arts integration and class field trips for the future. But right now, we're just trying to establish ways to get arts integration in the hands of teachers like you. So I created this lesson plan guide to help people with their thought process through planning an arts integration lesson. That resource you'll see on the resources that you receive, and we'll also use this guide later when we're looking at our lesson. So today we're going to talk about the book As Fast as Words Can Fly. All right, I'm going to read this book to you before we get into the lesson. This is similarly to how I would read to students to try to engage them into the piece of literature that we're going to be using when we're doing our artwork. In the right-hand corner, you'll see another QR code. This QR code is for another Padlet. And we're asking you on this Padlet, how are you going to create lasting memories through art experiences? Sorry, we're asking you on this Padlet to write an objective for the lesson for both the art form and the content. So what's going to happen is I'm going to read this book. We're going to understand what's happening in the book. And then I want you guys to think, if I'm going to create a lesson, what art form would I use for this book? And what would the objective be for my students? Do I want them to understand the setting of the text? Do I want them to know what the reader might be? What does the author want the reader to feel or receive when they're reading the text? What's the main message? What's the objective of this? Is this to inform or is this to entertain? Whatever your objective is, I want you to come up with one for this book after hearing it. And then what art form comes to mind? So I'm just going to remind people really quick of the art forms that we usually use for arts integration. There's digital media and photography, music, storytelling. There's puppetry, there's fine arts, there's drama and dance. So which one comes to mind and what objective would you assign to your students? This is As Fast as Words Can Fly by Pamela M. Tuck. Illustrations by Eric Velasquez. Trouble was brewing in Greenville, North Carolina. By 5 o'clock, 14-year-old Mason Steele was rushing to finish his schoolwork. Pa would be home from his meeting soon, bringing a new problem. Now, problems meant more work for Mason. He didn't mind, though. because helping Pa's civil rights group made Mason feel real important. The screen door banged shut. "Where's Mason?" Pa asked. He scanned the kitchen. "Willis, the boy's doing his lessons," Ma sighed. "I need him to write another letter for me." "Mason!" "Yes, sir," Mason called. He hurried into the room with a paper and a pencil, ready to report. Look at him. He's ready. He's like, "I know what's happening. I'm about to get my next task." "Whitaker's restaurant refused to serve Matt Duncan's boys," Pa explained. "We got to form another sit-in." Mason took notes while Pa rambled on about what happened. Only Mason could make sense out of what Pa said. Later, Mason turned his notes into a business letter. "These sound good enough to send to President Lyndon B. Johnson himself," Pa boasted after he read Mason's letter. One evening after the screen door banged shut, Mason waited for Pa to call him. Instead, he heard Ma and Pa talking quietly. When Mason finally entered the kitchen, he could hardly believe his eyes. "A typewriter," he gasped. "Yup," said Pa. "The group wanted to give it to you. Said you'd be quite a little lawyer for us. Figured a typewriter might help you someday." Mason slid his finger over the keys. Each row looked like a little step climbing up. "It's beautiful," Mason whispered. I'll type the civil rights group a thank you letter. That'll be the right thing to do." Ma agreed. Soon, school was out. During the summer, Mason and his two older brothers, Willis Jr. and Henry, picked tobacco with a few of the white boys who lived nearby. Patrick and Daniel Jones were the only two who acted friendly. They often raced against Mason and his brothers to be the first to fill the mule cart. In the evenings, Mason was weary from the day's work, but that didn't stop him from practicing typing. Using his index fingers to pick out the keys, he learned where every letter and symbol was located on the typewriter. Summer flew by. Before he knew it, Mason started his first year of high school. After the third week, Pa called him and his brothers into the kitchen one evening. "Now, boys, I got some real important news for you," he began. "We just won a case we've been fighting for a long time. It ain't right for y'all to be bussed up 12 times from Bethel Union High School when Belvoir High School ain't but 3 miles away." The boys' eyes widened. "Pa, you know the white folks ain't gonna like us going to the school, not one bit," Willis stammered. "Like it or not, y'all's going," Pa replied. "Somebody's got to make a change." The boys stared at each other in disbelief. "The bus will be here early Monday morning, so be ready," Pa said as he got up from the table and left the room. Monday morning, Mason and his brothers were nervous. They watched the school bus come roaring up the road. The driver slowed down just enough for the boys to see the white students on the bus laughing at them. Then he sped up real fast, blowing dust in the boys' faces. They just don't want us on their bus," Willis Jr. said. "I don't want to ride their bus anyways," Mason said. The boys trudged back to the house. When Pa told them the driver hadn't stopped for them, Pa was furious. The next day, the same thing happened. The third day, the bus stopped. Slowly, the boys climbed the steps. "Move it, I ain't got all day," the bus driver yelled. "And get to the back." The boys stumbled over one another as they hustled down the aisle. Henry spotted a familiar face. "Hey, Patrick," he said, but Patrick didn't answer. He just looked straight ahead, You Steel boys are asking for trouble, Daniel whispered. The driver took off, the sudden motion threw the boys into their seats. When the boys arrived at Belvoir High School, the principal, Mr. Bullock, barricaded the doorway. He looked as if he smelled a skunk. Report to class after the bell rings, he snapped and thrusted their schedules towards them. How will we know where to go? Willis Jr. asked. You found a way to get in here, so find your way around. Mr. Bullock turned and stormed into the building. By the time Mason located the right room, the class had already started. Cold stares and grimaces greeted him when he entered. Mason knew which seat was his, the one in the very back corner. Against the odds, Mason did well in school. He especially liked typing class. The teacher, Mrs. Roberts, ignored him, but she paid strict attention when she helped others. At home, Mason practiced what he had learned. It wasn't long before he needed to earn some money to buy typing paper and other supplies. Mason found out that the Neighborhood Youth Corps sponsored an after-school program that offered jobs. He applied and received a position in the school library. What can you do, boy? Mrs. Turner, the librarian, asked. I can type, ma'am. Mason answered. Well, come over here so I can show you what to do. Miss Turner took a stack of index cards and sat down at the typewriter. Pay attention, because I ain't going over this with you a second time, she snapped. Mason had to transfer the information on the spines of books onto the cards. Mrs. Turner typed one card and left him without further instructions. 2 hours later, Mrs. Turner approached Mason and said, how's it coming, boy? And Mason handed her a stack of index cards. Mrs. Turner's eyes bulged. My goodness, how many cards did you type? I think about 100, ma'am, Mason replied. Mrs. Turner checked the cards. She couldn't find a single mistake. Gracious boy, she said, you type faster than Mrs. Roberts. Mrs. Roberts was pleased to be relieved of her library card work duty. She became friendlier to Mason in typing class. She even allowed him to use the new electric typewriter. The first time Mason used the electric typewriter, the letters jumped onto the paper with just the slightest touch. He had to get used to pressing a button to return to the left margin of his paper. He could type faster and more quietly on an electric typewriter, but he missed that tinkling bell on the manual typewriter that had signaled a new line. Mason continued to improve his typing skills. Before long, he could type 40 words per minute. His job was going so well, and he was earning money that he needed for his typing supplies. It's that new fancy electric typewriter. Then Mason was fired without explanation. Then I messed with the wrong fella. Pa fumed when he found out what happened. I'm gonna call Golden Fricks on this one. He's a field secretary for the SCLC. Mason had heard plenty of Pa's stories about the Southern Christian Leadership Conference, the organization that coordinated nonviolent action towards ending segregation. Pa had said that the field secretaries interviewed people who complained about unequal treatment. Then they organized a march, a sit-in, or a protest. Golden Fricks was personally selected by Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., Pa added. And believe me, son, Mr. Fricks, he shakes the ground. The next morning, Golden Fricks, Pa, and other civil rights workers went to the Board of Education, and an investigation began. The Board of Education discovered that Mrs. Turner's husband didn't want her to stay after school with the Negro boy. The federal government was funding the youth corps and now threatened to stop the school money for the program. Because Mason was treated unfairly, Mason was rehired. One day in typing class, Mrs. Roberts announced that there was going to be a typing tournament among some of the high schools in the county. The fastest typist in the class would represent Belvoir High. The students fiercely competed against one another. Mr. Bullock reviewed the scores. Then he announced the winner. Mason Steele will represent our school in the typing tournament. How can a Negro boy represent our school? A student blurted out. We can't afford any more trouble with the Board of Education. Now. Mr. Bullock responded, stealing a glance at Mason. Do I really want to do this? Mason thought. But then he recalled Paul's words. Somebody's got to make a change. On the day of the tournament, Mr. Bullock and Mrs. Roberts drove Mason to Farmville High School. Upon entering the auditorium, Mason scanned the room. He tried to ignore the stares of the white students as he considered the selection of electric and manual typewriters. Mason knew if he chose a manual typewriter, he would lose time. He would have to take his left hand off the keys so that he could hit the lever to start each new line. All the other students sat down at electric typewriters. Mason had to make his decision. He closed his eyes to think. His typewriter at home flashed before him. Mason sat down at a manual typewriter. The judge went over the rules, then shouted, "Begin!" Tap, 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 ding! Mason finished his first line. He couldn't hear how fast the others were typing, but he focused only on his paper. Tap, 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 ding! Tap, 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 ding! Mason's fingers flew over the keys. His typing echoed through the auditorium. Bzzz, time's up, the judge yelled. All eyes were on Mason as the judge collected papers. After a long wait, the results were announced. I can't believe this. I really can't believe this, the judge said into the microphone. Mason Steele from Belvoir High has broken all previous records with a typing speed of 65 words per minute. No one cheered. Mason just stared straight ahead. Mr. Bullock accepted the typing championship plaque on behalf of Fort Belvoir High. Not a single person in the audience applauded, and Mason received nothing. That's some skill you have, boy, Mrs. Roberts complimented Mason on the drive back to school. Thank you, ma'am, Mason responded. I just have one question, Mr. Bullock said. Why in the world did you choose a manual typewriter? Mason cleared his throat. Because it reminds me of where I come from, sir. Neither of the adults said anything more to Mason the rest of the way. But Mason knew his words typed on that paper had already spoke for him loud and clear. That is our book, As Fast as Words Can Fly. And honestly, anytime I see 8 on a paper, my natural Southern drawl just comes back. I'm from Hampton, Virginia, so the original Southern Virginia, and it just comes back. So that's what that is. All right, so let's head to your Padlet and see what you guys are thinking of as an objective and an art form. What's an objective you want your students to walk away understanding and learning from a lesson you would do? And what is art form do you think naturally lends itself to this book? And I'm going to move through the pace of this a little bit faster, just so that we can get through all the juicy goodiness that I have to share. Main idea being portrayed in drawing. Students will be able to explain the main idea. Great. And then with that, you would do a drawing skill. So students will be able to explain the main idea of the story through drawing using hash mark shading. That would be an example. Illustrated poetry. Yes, yes, yes. Choose one event from the story, write an illustration poem that details the actions and feelings of the characters during the event. And so the art form that they would learn is poetry, how to write a poem. What is rhyme scheme? What are we going to do with stanzas? What kind of poem? Is this going to be a haiku? Is this going to be a ballad? What are we going to do here? Students will design a puppet that goes with the character from the book and act out one of the scenes and showing how the discrimination impacts the character. Excellent. So they'll learn some type of puppeting skill. There's Japanese silent puppetry, which I'm not going to flub the name, but it's a very interesting form of puppetry that I did a residency once, and it was really nice. There's also shadow puppetry. There's finger puppets, hand puppets. We got lots of puppets. Okay, so those are some ideas for objectives. Keep thinking of that. Use that type of inspiration to help you when you're sitting down, starting to plan a arts integrated lesson plan. Okay, so we're going to get into the lesson that I developed just for this presentation, just for you guys, which is an arts integration lesson plan where students will experience radio theater as their art form, and they will learn some things about central idea, main idea, characterization, and setting. So when you're doing an arts integrated lesson plan, the place that I like to start, because to me, it's like a ladder approach. And the first rung is to pick the standard. What is the Common Core standard you're going to use, or your state standard? And what is the art standard you're going to use? These are equally important in the lesson and hold equal value. So for this lesson, our Common Core English language standards are going to be add audio recording to a visual display, add audio recordings and visual displays to presentations when appropriate to enhance the development of the main idea or themes, which is a speaking listening standard for 4th grade. The written work standard is going to be for 4th grade as well, which is write narratives to develop a real or imagined experience or events using effective technique, descriptive details, and clear event sequences. And then the reading standard is going to be describe in depth a character, setting, or event in a story or drama, drawing a specific detail in the text. Now, this isn't going to be a single day lesson plan that I'm showing you guys. It's actually more of like a project-based learning unit, kind of. It's an entire project that can take up to as little as a week, but more than a week. Okay, so the National Core Art Standards we're going to do is these are all 4th grade. It will be creating, which is generating and conceptualizing artistic ideas and work. Performing, which is they'll realize artistic ideas and work through interpretation and presentation. And then responding, receiving, analyzing artistic work. We're also going to do some connecting and, of course, presenting. Through this, they're going to learn some specific art form skills, such as creating sound effects, creating an original audio work, recording and editing an original audio work, writing a dramatic script, and putting that dramatic script to play. Voice skills, acting skills. There's a lot of things they're going to take away from this, but all of those things go under those categories. So the driving question is going to be, how can we create a captivating radio theater presentation that brings our characters, settings, and events of our chosen book to life through an effective narrative writing, immersive audio recordings, and dialogue? I also wrote a secondary driving question, because sometimes we want it to be in more student-friendly language. So I simplified it right there in the second question. This is going to be a book that's going to be on Literacy Central as well. So if you want to check that out, it'll be up there. All right, so we already wrote our objectives. So let's look and see what objective I wrote for this lesson. So I'll make it a little bigger for you guys. And don't be intimidated by the size of this lesson plan. It was written and intended to give additional steps, information, so that you guys could understand the intentionality behind what I put into the lesson plan. So just like we have 2 standards, we're going to have 2 objectives. There's going to be an art form objective, and then a subject area objective, and then a connected objective. So I'm just going to read the connected objective. Students will adapt the text into a radio theater script and perform it using elements of theater, incorporating appropriate sound effects, dialogue to support the main ideas or themes. This script and performance should bring the characters, settings, and events of our text to life and convey an understanding of the aforementioned concepts. There's going to be a lot of skills kids walk away with. There's going to be transdisciplinary skills, 21st century skills, but there's going to be some activation of prior knowledge that needs to be done. Okay, so I wrote a mini lesson to help you all activate prior knowledge. If you choose to do this in classroom, it can be, edited, changed to go up to 8th grade. You just have to be very specific in how you elevate the rigor. But I wrote a mini lesson to activate some prior knowledge, because what we hear here is a great content opportunity where students can get engaged in the historical impact of the civil rights movement, what the SCLC was, who are the paramount people being mentioned in this text, Mr. Finks, and also Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Why were those people so impactful? Why do the author pick those people's names? So some information about the civil rights movement and understanding about the desegregation of schools is necessary to have prior knowledge to be really impactful for this. And so I wrote a mini lesson that kind of goes over that. If you guys are interested, that's within this lesson plan. Okay, so there's a lot of cross-cultural applications. We have history and social studies. Not cross-cultural, cross-content applications. We have history and social studies. We have music, where you can bring in those Negro spirituals, those civil rights movement songs, and incorporate that into what you're doing in your radio theater to try to just really get kids excited, but also to bring the essence of what the author is, trying to portray when he's taking you back to that time. They're also going to learn some skills for technology. Okay, so I wrote a rubric for you guys, so you have a rubric for the radio theater assessment. There's a lot of ways to have formative assessments as you go through this lesson plan, peer feedback during script development and revision stages, and then group discussions and reflections to talk about the effectiveness of the strategies that they use to work as a group or the things that they are producing. As a summative assessment, they're going to perform this presentation in radio script and put everything together. And then they're also going to have some written reflections on how they made this. What was their process? What did you think? What did your group do? How did you come up with this? So I wrote a section to help you know what you needed to prepare yourself for this lesson. You're going to read and familiarize the book. You're going to understand the standards and gather some additional resources for your mini lesson on the civil rights movement, should you choose to use it. You're going to work through the steps and the steps for this activity. I gave you the steps, but you're going to need to differentiate it and accommodate it for the kids that you have in your class, but also with your skill set in mind and with your student skill set in mind. I would create an audiovisual resource for what they're going to be creating themselves. Maybe you do your own radio theater or you present one to them. Okay, so this is just going to talk about ways you can prepare. All right, I also included ways for your co-teacher to be engaged. We want every person in the learning environment to be able to help add to students' understanding of the literature work that they're working with, but also their application of what they're going to do in their art form. All right, so let's jump down. So one of the most important things I find when we're doing an arts integration lesson, when rolling it out to students, is the engagement part. You have to get them hyped up to do this because it's about to be some hard work coming, but it's going to pay off and it's going to feel so good when you do it. So ways that we get people excited is to start with the art form. Start with a presentation of what they're going to be doing by a professional in the art form. So I included some information about the historical background of radio theater and why it was used and what it was used for when it originally came out. But I also have a start with the art, which is going to lead us into a group discussion in our classes of, what do we think is going to happen? I would have students sit down, close their eyes, and listen to an excerpt of The Shadow, which was a very popular radio theater show in 1938.
You know you can be sent to prison for perjury?
Yes, I know it well enough.
Before this trial began, you testified that the defendants in this case, Slater and Marino, entered your store, that they forced you to buy counterfeit $5 and $10 bills to be passed out in change to your unsuspecting customers. Why have you changed your testimony? Why?
I was mistaken, that's all.
You're lying, Michael Sullivan, lie.
So this is it's really juicy. They're trying to figure out who did it, and it's a who done it. It's like one of those. So I would play that for my students and really try to get them engaged and understanding here, these are professionals in the art form. This is what this looks like. Additionally to that, when we engage them in the art skills, so when we take time, because we're going to first engage students in the content, we're going to talk about the book, we're going to learn about central main ideas ideas. We're going to learn about the theme. We're going to talk about characters and setting. After we go through the content and the delivery of instruction to understand the content portion, we're going to deliver instruction to understand the art skill. And again, we're going to start with the arts so that students can understand and have an example of what's being asked of them and what they would do. So I would show them this video.
The thing that's different about a
Yeah,
Verbo vacation home,
they're always with
you
us.
always have the whole place to
Okay, so I would also show them this video. What is it like to create a radio theater? And so this is called Back of the Mic, which they filmed in 1938 to give people a behind the scenes view of what it's like to create a radio theater production. And so what it does is it brings people to the movie theater where they're watching a film, but then it also brings them back scene where the artists are creating the film.
And headed up toward Pine Gap, and they took Uncle with them.
Come on now, it's quick. We'll get the boys together and we'll go after.
No, I'll take the jitney into town and get my car.
All right, Betty.
Okay, so you guys get the idea. So they're learning. This is how these people are making these sound effects. They're getting excited. They're seeing the stuff and thinking about ways they're going to produce those sound effects. The students are going to work hard to move through this lesson plan. But when they are done, after creating their script, they're going to have a firm understanding of what did the author want me to feel and hear and say and think in my head when I'm reading this book. And that is going to be projected to whatever audience that reads their script or listens to their radio theater. They'll have a firm understanding of setting because they will create it by making sounds that create the setting. They will have an understanding of characters' feelings and the development of them throughout the story as their feelings change and as things happen to them, because they're writing script and dialogue to portray it, but they're also making sounds in their voices. So one thing about radio theater, I always tell the kids, people can hear you smile on the phone. So when you say it, you have to act it out. You have to do the stuff. If you're grumpy, you have to do the stuff. You have to act it out. So they're also going to get that acting experience. All right. So that's a little bit of how, that's an example of a lesson that we could do with this type of text for arts integration. You guys now have that lesson. It's written all the way through every step that you might need. You may need to tailor it a little bit for your class, but this will give you a kind of like a template for when you write your own as well, and the thought processes that you might have as you go through them. I included a lot of extra writing to try to help that process as you guys do it on your own. And so I just want to show you that any book can be used for arts integration. So here's another text that we have here. And so I'm going to read an excerpt from this text, but I want you guys to put into practice some of the things that you've learned today. So arts integration is equally teaching the content and the skill. Arts integration is the integration of multiple skills, not just arts. We're going to have some 21st century skills and other things, transdisciplinary skills and other skills that are going to come in while we are naturally doing arts integration. It's an easy opportunity for cross-content connections. It's an easy opportunity to pull in some other subjects, okay? We're not gonna do arts enhancement. We're not gonna just say, hey, make a picture of how this author made you feel after reading the text. No, we're gonna say, create a scene that emotes what the author made you feel when you read this text. And then we're going to teach them how to emote. So that's the example of arts integration. And it's really as simple as that. It's teaching content through the art skill while also maintaining that the art skill is being taught. All right, so this is going to be the excerpt. We have a Padlet QR code in the top right-hand corner, and I think it's also going to be in the chat. I'm asking you on the Padlet, what are some natural art connections for this book, and what standards or lesson ideas come to mind? So that same exercise that we did before, but this time some standards and some lesson ideas. I want to hear those and see what are coming to mind, and how are you going to connect? How are we going to teach the art skill and the content skill? So think about that when you think of types of art forms and the standards. All right, so I'm going to read an excerpt, and then we'll answer that in our Padlet. This book is called Crossing Bokchito, It's a Choctaw tale of friendship and freedom by Tim Tingle and illustrated by Jean Rorex Bridges. This book and the other book that I read are both Lee and Low books. The publisher has graciously allowed me to read these books, but they've also helped out Reading is Fundamental a lot by allowing them to have their books. So please look into Lee and Low books. When I was looking through the books to pick one for this professional development, I found it to be really interesting that a lot of their books speak to themes of social justice, culture, language differences. And I think it's a really great place to go to find some culturally inclusive books, but also a well-rounded amount of books to represent all different types of cultures. So I really enjoyed looking through the books to pick these two from Lee and Low, and it was a nice experience. So I encourage you all to do the same. All right, so here we are. Martha Tom, oh, sorry. There's a page before this. One Sunday morning during this time, a Choctaw mama woke up her daughter. Martha Tom, the sun has been up for 2 hours. Get up and put your dress on, you lazy little girl. I have a wedding to cook for today. Take this basket and fill it with blackberries. Now hurry back. When Martha Tom couldn't find blackberries on the Choctaw side of the river, she did something she'd been told never to do. She went crossing Bach Chitto. The only way across Bach Chitto in those days was a stone path just beneath the surface of the river. Only Choctaws knew it was there, for the Choctaws had built it. When the river flooded, they built the stones up. When the river sank, in times of drought, they built the stones down, always just beneath the muddy surface of the water. Martha Tom found a patch of blackberries on the slave side of the river. She filled her basket, then looked at the sky for the sun to lead her home. But it was cloudy and she was lost. Martha Tom thought she was approaching the river, but instead she was walking still deeper into the woods. She came upon a stump covered with grapevines. Before her lay a clearing filled with logs, rolled out as if they were benches. Martha Tom saw someone coming and dove into the vines. A skinny African-American man with a cane stepped out of the trees. While Martha Tom watched, he climbed onto the stump and called out, "We are bound for the promised land." All right, so where's some natural art connections in this book through the illustrations, through which you have seen already? And where's some standards or objectives and ideas on how to teach some content through this art form that come to mind? Okay, so I'm gonna head to the Padlet and see what you guys are writing. We have about 5 more minutes left, and I want to make sure we get all this information, so I might move a little bit faster. Here we are. Let me get to the link in the chat. Okay, yes, point of view. You could do a monologue of Martha Tom. After reading this book, how do you think Martha Tom felt? Create a monologue that displays and evokes the feelings and the experiences of Martha Tom during this book, which means you also have to understand the context and have comprehension of the chain of events, and maybe chronologically, we can even spice it up, okay? Storytelling, 100%. Oh, okay, rock painting. Okay, I like that. You can paint some rocks and represent the tides. Here's a cross-content connection. We can talk about tides and why the river rose and sank and why they needed to build up the stones and build them back up again. Then we can create sculptures to represent the setting of the story, right? And learn how to do sculptures there. Let's see what else. The study of the art of the Choctaw people. Yes, more cross-content, that's cross-cultural. Study the art form of the Choctaw people. What is something that we see in the book that they have that maybe we can study to do? I see somebody with a beaded necklace. I see some people weaving their own clothing. I see traditional clothing. I see moccasins. How can we pull that stuff out and make it natural surroundings, seasons? Yes, yes, yes. Analyze vocabulary. Great. You can, for new vocabulary words, you can have students create a song to describe that vocabulary word. It can be a short one or a long song. Point of view. Okay, you guys got this. Basket making, you guys have got this. So I'm hoping that you're feeling really excited about using arts integration in your classroom. And you're probably thinking, well, where do I start? Well, here are some more book options. These are all on Lee and Low. And what I did here is I told you some ideas of what art forms I found that naturally connected when I read the book. So you'll see those art forms really close to the book to show some art forms that I feel connect really well with the content, and also some of the standards that you could probably pull to teach. So these are some book options that you guys can start with. There's also going to be some resources here. So there's I included here my lesson plan guide, the core art standards, some lesson plans that you can use that are already made, lots of places to get additional information about the Arts Integration Conference that's in DC at the Kennedy Center. Last year it was online. I'm not sure if they're doing it online again. Here's some big databases of lesson plans already written. Some of them are organized by standards, so that way you don't, have to reinvent the wheel. You can test out some lessons first before you get writing your own or creating your own. And then there's going to be a one-pager that we have for you guys on the resource center that is going to have all of these grants and residencies that you can apply for. So I'm going to tell you what a residency is. A residency is when an artist, a professional artist in the field who has been trained to teach, elementary or secondary pedagogy, that joins your class as a co-teacher and helps teach your arts integration lesson plan. So they teach the art skill and you teach the content skill, and then you come together as a Megatron and you do the whole performance in the art pieces together. And it was a really nice experience for me when I did artist residencies and trained artists how to do this. So this is a list of places you can go to find residents. So before we leave today, I want to really know, was this impactful for you? Did you learn anything? What did you learn? How has your thinking changed? And how will you use this information with your children? It's going to be really beneficial to me because it will help me, also, tailor my professional development so that they're most impactful to people like you all who are in front of our students and working really hard to make sure they understand these concepts. So come to your top right hand corner. There's going to be a Padlet, and Carly graciously put all that grant and residency information into a one-pager that you're going to find on Literacy Central as well with the rest of your resources. So let's head to the Padlet and see what you guys are thinking as you reflect about what you just learned. Yes, all the links are in the chat. I love it. And she's going to have the one pager for you too. I love it. All right, so people are rolling in. I'm going to go to the question and answer section to start answering some questions and things like that. And I'll come back to look at some reflections. How will this work for pre-K? That's a good question. So I taught pre-K 4 for a little while. And we, believe it or not, we use arts integration a lot. One of my biggest art forms that I love to do at pre-K is sculpting and fine art. Of course, it lends itself to that, but also puppetry. So what we did with puppetry is we just drew pictures and cut those pictures out and put them on popsicle sticks, but we used our actions to bring things to life. Another thing we did with my pre-K students who were a little bit advanced, we used our puppets to sound out words. So after we created our puppets, after we learned about how the popsicle stick is a structure that allows us to move the puppets around, and how this, our puppet face that we drew, that I helped you cut out and we put on the puppet stick, is our character. How do we bring our character to life? What kind of words, what kind of sounds, what kind of feelings might our character have? Oh no, our character dropped the milk. How do they feel? Oh, they feel sad. And then we go and read the book. And then while they're reading the book, they're doing their popsicle stick and they're emoting. Okay, so that's one way you can do it with pre-K. There's so many things. With the sculpting, maybe you are doing a math lesson and you're trying to do addition. With sculpting, we might learn how to sculpt a ball, a sphere, and how we use our hands to palm and knead the ball into a sphere. And so now we're going to use our hands to palm and knead a sphere 5 times, and we're going to palm and knead 2 more spheres. How many spheres do we have, friends? Yes, we have 7 spheres. So it can be something just as simple as that. They all learned how to palm and knead into a sphere, and they all learned some addition and how we took those 2 things and added them together. We created our own math manipulatives. All right, sorry if I know that some of you might leave because it's past 8 o'clock, but I'm going to try to answer these questions. Do we have time for that, Erin?
Yes. We will stay on. There are some black boxes covering the screen. I'm not sure if you can see that on your end.
Oh, no. Okay. I think the black boxes are my Zoom controls, so I will move them.
Oh, thank you. And while you're doing that, I just want to say on behalf of Reading is Fundamental and myself, thank you so much, Jessica, for bringing your energy and your creativity this evening. And we are super happy to stay on if you want to continue answering some questions.
Okay, great. Yes. Okay. I'm sorry if the black boxes have been away for some time. It's actually my pleasure. I tell Erin this story all the time, but Reading is Fundamental for me was one of the first times I got my own book that I owned that wasn't from the library, that was fresh and new and untouched. And it was my book. And I will always remember that. So I'm always happy to make sure that that type of experience continues for other people. Okay, thank you. I'm sorry about the QR code. Oh, okay, lots of just thank yous in the chat. I'm not sure if anyone has any other questions, but as I go through, I just see little thank yous and things like that. I really appreciate you all. My email and things like that, I'll make sure I give so that you guys can have that if you want to reach out and have questions, or if you want to learn more about arts integration. I'm here for the kids, your kids, my kids, so it doesn't matter. And yeah.
Hey, Jessica, I do see someone in the chat had a question about a group or organization that they can collaborate with a little bit more. So maybe you could talk a little bit about your organization. I think this is
Yeah, if you want professional development for your staff, or you just want some ideas or some, some information sharing, you can reach out to me at the Creation Gym, which is my email is really simple, jessica@thecreationgym.com. We can work together to try to see best ways to serve you. There's a plethora of programs and institutions and different groups that help people with arts integration. A lot of those are mentioned in my resources. Arts for Learning is one of them, Young Audiences, the Kennedy Center, the Phillips Collection. Those are all in my resources. But yes, I'm happy to either connect you with someone who can help you or provide the service myself through the firm. Okay, I hope the black boxes weren't there the whole time, but I hope you guys got
No, it was just on the last
good.
slide.
Okay, good. Well, I'm glad everyone enjoyed, and I'm here for other questions. I see some rolling in. Okay.
Thank you all. Just a reminder, everyone will receive the recording for this within 2 days, as well as links to all the resources mentioned, a copy of the PowerPoint slides, and a certificate of completion.
Okay, well, thank you so much. I had such a great time, showing you guys my passion. I hope that this has made you feel prepared to start incorporating and experimenting in your classroom. Remember, nobody is there to tell you this is an arts integration or you didn't do it right. And the kids obviously aren't trained in arts integration. So continue to just experiment, try it out. Think about ways that you can make sure, as long as you're teaching that art skill and the content skill, you're in that direction, and it's going to be memorable, and it's going to help them construct that knowledge. Thank you, everyone. And I look forward to hearing from the people who are interested in learning more.
Thanks, Jessica. Good night, everyone.